Welcome to THN Mystery. This is not a place for the curious. This is a place for those who need to know. Even if knowing means you'll never sleep again. We don't make things up. We retell what has already happened. Forgotten cases, shadows in history, and things that were never meant to be spoken of. If you believe in reason, prepare to let it go. If this is exactly what you've been looking for, then you're in the right place. Like and subscribe to the channel and join us as we step into another chapter of darkness. Now turn off the lights and enjoy.
Four teenagers entered the forest. Only one came back alive. The others were mutilated in their sleep, and the killer never found. Investigation file. Crime under the Midnight SUN Chapter 1. The trip of no return. It was the summer of 1960. An unrelenting heat pressing down on the vast northern forests. On June 4th, four young teenagers left the city of Espoo, Finland, riding south on motorcycles toward a remote lake called Bodom for a camping trip that on one bike rode Seppo Boiman and his brunette girlfriend, Anja Talikimäki. On the other were Nils Wilhelm Gustafsson, 18, and his girlfriend Mila Ermelie Björklund, who had just turned 15. This getaway was meant to be an early birthday gift for Mila. But what they didn't know was, Mila would never live to see her 16th birthday. Lake Bodom stretches over 3 kilometers, surrounded by pine and birch trees, so wild and isolated, it seemed to exist beyond the reach of civilization. That on the way, the group stopped at a roadside kiosk to buy drinks and beer. The elderly woman working there acted cold and unwelcoming, warning them to stay away from the lake. Her gaze as they drove away unsettled Mila. It felt like an omen, like nature itself was trying to send a warning. Still, they set up camp on the southern shore, far from other visitors. Their small tent was pitched right beside the water, with motorcycles leaning against nearby trees, ready for a weekend of freedom and adventure. That night, the northern sun never truly set. At 2 a.m., Mila was still awake, writing in her diary, while Seppo fished and the other boys were drunk. Those lines in her diary would become the last words the young girl would ever write. Chapter 2. The massacre in the mist. The next morning, around 11 a.m. on June 5th, a local man named Esko Johansson brought his 2 sons to the lake to swim. But they would never enter the water. From afar, they saw something at the edge of the forest, like a pile of shredded fabric soaked in darkness. Esko approached, only to discover a tent torn to pieces and stained in blood. That on top of the collapsed tent lay Seppo Boisman's body, disfigured, his skull crushed. Beneath the torn fabric, part of a young woman's body was exposed. Mila, naked from the waist down, covered in stab wounds, her bones fractured, her skull shattered. Inside the tent, Anja's body was found in a similar bloody, brutal state. The strangest part? Nils Gustafsson was still alive. He was moaning in a delirious state, blood pouring from his mouth, jaw completely broken, face swollen. He couldn't utter a single word. He was rushed to the hospital immediately. The crime scene quickly spiraled into chaos. Police failed to secure a perimeter. Dozens of curious locals flooded in, trampling potential evidence. An irreversible mistake. Chapter 3. The invisible attacker. No weapon was ever found. The tent had been slashed from the outside. indicating the killer struck from beyond the fabric walls, leaving no chance for escape. Police uncovered several strange clues. Nils' shoes were found nearly a kilometer away from the tent, covered in the blood of the 3 victims, but none of his own. Some valuables were missing: wallets, watches, and a motorcycle key. Oddly, both motorcycles were left untouched. Nothing truly valuable had been taken. Several local witnesses reported seeing a tall, blond man with a square jaw in the area during the early morning hours. A 14-year-old boy claimed he saw the same man standing beside the destroyed tent around 6:00 a.m. Police began building a composite sketch of the suspect. The image quietly circulated through the press. Chapter 4: Faces in the Shadows. The investigation branched out like a gnarled tree, spreading wide but rooted in rot. Police focused on suspicious men known to frequent the lake. Most notable was a man who resembled the witness sketch: blonde hair, square jaw, piercing eyes. Medical records from Helsinki Surgical Hospital, located 25 kilometers from the crime scene, revealed something disturbing. On June 6, 1960, Hans Assmann, a German living in Finland, arrived in a distressed state. His shirt was smeared with a red substance, which he claimed was paint. His fingernails were dirty, his hair greasy with sweat, and he was visibly anxious. Yet, because his alibi, provided by a girlfriend, was deemed plausible, police never tested his clothes nor kept him in custody. Assmann soon became an attention seeker, feeding sensational stories to true crime magazines and hinting that he knew more than he let on. The second, more shocking suspect, Carl Gustafsson Kjellström, owner of the roadside kiosk the teenagers had visited. A local drunk with a temper, known for throwing rocks, slashing tents, even firing warning shots at campers. Carl lived just 800 meters from the crime scene and had a well-known hatred for noisy youths. At the time, his wife and daughter swore he was at home all night. But 9 years later, one drunken night in August 1969, Carl confessed to a neighbor that he was the one who killed the teens at Lake Bodom. The neighbor, terrified, simply replied, "Then you might as well walk into the lake, because prison is the only place waiting for you." That evening, Carl was seen swimming alone in the lake around 6 p.m. Shortly after, he vanished. His body was found floating just 3 meters from the crime scene, with 2 empty wine bottles drifting nearby. Weeks later, Carl's wife changed her story. Carl had slept alone on the couch that night, and she had lied out of fear. Yet police again dismissed the confession, too unreliable, made under the haze of alcohol. The case slipped back into the shadows. Chapter 5: The Circle Titans. The case seemed long dead, until modern forensic science reopened doors once thought sealed shut. Investigators re-examined the old evidence, including Nils Gustafsson's shoes, found years earlier far from the scene. What they discovered was shocking. All the blood on the shoes belonged to the 3 victims. None of it was Nils' own. Prosecutors argued that this could only mean one thing: Nils was wearing the shoes when the murders were committed. In 2004, 44 years after the massacre, Nils Gustafsson was arrested and charged with the murder of his girlfriend and 2 closest friends. Authorities pieced together a chilling theory. Nils, drunk and quarrelsome, argued with Mila. The fight escalated, and he was kicked out of the tent by the others. Enraged and jealous, Nils returned sometime after 4 a.m., Carrying a knife and a rock, he bludgeoned and stabbed all 3 victims, then staged the scene to look like a robbery. He disposed of his shoes, along with the wallets, watches, and keys, but did not flee. Instead, he lay down beside my land, pretended to be injured and unconscious. The image painted was that of a jealous teenager turned cold-blooded killer. Chapter 6: Law and Shattered Memory. In 2005, the long-awaited trial began. The sole survivor of a mass murder was now on trial. Accused of being the perpetrator, Nils' defense attorney countered fiercely. Nils had a shattered jaw, cracked skull, and was unable to speak. How could someone in that condition kill 3 people and stage an elaborate crime scene? His injuries were severe: one eye swollen shut, face wrapped in bandages. Could such a person really walk a kilometer to discard shoes, then return and lie beside the dead? The attorney argued. If Nils acted in a blind rage, he wouldn't have had the clarity to orchestrate such a convincing cover-up. The jury agreed. Nils Gustafsson was found not guilty and awarded nearly 45,000 euros in compensation for wrongful imprisonment. Chapter 7: The Open File. So, who killed beneath the midnight sun? Was it Hans Assmann, the man with bloodied clothes never examined? Was it Carl Chillstrom, the man who confessed before disappearing under the very lake where the victims died? Or was it Nils Gustafsson, the lone survivor who claimed he remembered nothing, yet remained suspicious for decades? Or was the killer someone else entirely, a nameless figure, lost among the crowd of onlookers who trampled through the crime scene, then vanished without a trace? The murder weapon was never found. It could lie at the bottom of Lake Bodom, or buried deep in the forest, in a place where even the midnight sun can never shine. Crime under the midnight sun, tentatively closed, but never truly ended. Two ships vanish in the Arctic. A note found years later reveals 105 survivors marching to their deaths. What really happened on the Franklin expedition? What they left behind was more than just bones. Historical File: Ghosts in the Ice. Chapter 1: The White Curtain Rises. A quiet expedition set sail from Greenhithe, not far from London. Its destination was not some uncharted continent or hidden treasure, but a sea route swallowed by ice. A deadly waterway through the Arctic Ocean. Two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, carried 129 souls into the Canadian wilderness, aiming to become the first to complete the world map by discovering the fabled Northwest Passage. Leading the mission was Sir John Franklin, an explorer once nicknamed the man who ate his boots after a previous Arctic ordeal where he survived by consuming moss, leather, and sheer hope. This was to be the final mission of his career and of his life. Chapter 2: The Ships That Never Returned. Erebus and Terror were no ordinary vessels. Their bows were reinforced with iron, fitted with internal heating systems, and powered by retractable steam propellers for ice navigation. They were equipped with cutting-edge technology, saltwater distillers, daguerreotype cameras, and even insulated diving suits. Yet the pride of the expedition lay in its 16,000 tins of canned food, considered a modern solution for long journeys. They also brought along a dog, a monkey, a cat, 12,000 books, wine, tobacco, stage props, as if this were a theater production, not a life or death journey. After their final stop at Greenland, they left a few letters and farewells, then silently entered the sea of Ice Point 2. Whaling ships witnessed them pass through Lancaster Sound, and no one ever saw them again. 129 people vanished. Chapter 3. The years frozen in ice. Throughout the first winter, the ships were trapped near Beechey Island, close to Devon Island. 3 men died, officially of pneumonia, but in truth, they were being poisoned from within. The horrifying truth about the canned goods would only be discovered centuries later. The cans were poorly soldered, leaching toxic lead. The food was rotten, infected with mold and bacteria. Water distillation pipes were lined with lead, leaking into every drop. They drank. Worst of all, severe zinc deficiency led their bodies to break down bone, releasing even more lead into the bloodstream. Meanwhile, a silent killer crept aboard from Greenland, tuberculosis. The following year, they left Beechey past Cornwallis Island and were trapped once again, this time on the west coast of King William Island. None of them knew they had entered a glacial death trap, where 2 currents of ice converged and crushed the ships into eternal stillness. In June 1847, Sir John Franklin died. The ice did not melt. The cold never ceased. Hunger began to unravel what remained of their strength. Chapter 4. The March of No Return. April 25, 1848. A gray, bitter day. In a small stone cairn on King William Island, someone returned. They retrieved a note left a year earlier, an optimistic report penned by Captain Fitzjames. Then, in frantic, crooked handwriting along the margins, they added chilling news. Sir John Franklin died on June 11, 1847. To date, 9 officers and 15 crew have died. The ships were abandoned on April 22nd. The 105 survivors will attempt to march toward the Back River. The Back River, 240 kilometers away. In such hostile conditions, it was a death sentence delivered by ice and exhaustion. The survivors began abandoning ship, hauling lifeboats weighing over 3,500 kilograms across ice and rock, dragging them meter by meter. They were starving. They were collapsing. They began dying, one by one, then in groups. The weak were left behind. The lucky ones crawled on. Many returned to the ships, seeking shelter, spoiled rations, skeletal friends, and a quieter death. Chapter 5. Whispers from the Frozen Dead. A decade later, explorers began to find bodies along the coast of King William Island. At a place now called Starvation Cove, they found corpses in lifeboats, limbs severed. Some showed signs of thigh and arm bones split open, evidence of desperate marrow extraction. In 1993, 145 years later, when the snow thawed, archaeologists uncovered the final camp. Bones cut with knives, scratch marks at joints, holes bored into large bones to drain marrow. All matched accounts from the Inuit, dismissed for over a century. And then came stranger clues. The Inuit reported seeing a group of armed white men hunting caribou, accompanied by a strange dog named Neptune. One survivor of a group of 4 refused to eat human flesh, while the other 3 did not hesitate. When rescued by the Inuit, 1 died immediately, while the other 3 survived a few weeks longer before vanishing. A native man swore he met Captain Crozier alive in 1852, nearly 7 years after the disappearance. Did someone truly escape the nightmare? Chapter 6. Ghost ships rise from memory. In 2014, the wreck of Erebus was discovered beneath Crampton Bay, not far from where the Inuit had once pointed. In 2016, the second ship, Terror, was found in Terror Bay, a name long considered. Coincidence, now revealed as grimly prophetic. Both wrecks were nearly perfectly preserved, frozen for 170 years, holding their secrets beneath the icy depths. When archaeologists first entered, the clocks still ticked. The teacups sat on the tables. The rooms looked as if they had been abandoned just yesterday. Chapter 7. The file remains open. Despite the passing of time, over 90 bodies have never been found. They likely dissolved into the ice or lie beneath the sea where no light can reach. The irony. While the British failed to find the Northwest Passage, the very ship sent to find Franklin, HMS Investigator, accidentally discovered the route. Not long after, the Investigator itself was trapped in ice and abandoned. This cursed region made no distinction between explorer and rescuer. All who entered became victims of the cold. Candle, the Franklin expedition, Ghosts in the Ice, is a case closed. But the wind beneath the frozen sea still whispers what was never spoken. A NASA engineer, a haunted house, a shadow that crawls out from under the bed. This is the story of a man of science, forced to face something he couldn't explain. Paranormal File: The Phantom in the NASA Engineer's House. Chapter 1. The Man Without Imagination. Bill Vaile was the kind of person the modern world needed: scientific, rational, and grounded. For over 15 years at NASA, he worked as a robotics engineer, designing critical components for mechanical arms used in zero-gravity environments. Friends described him as a man without imagination, as he never believed in anything that couldn't be proven by data. After a painful divorce in 2002, Bill fell into a crisis. Overwhelmed by emptiness, he left Washington and returned to his hometown of Arlington, Texas, where his younger brother ran a water purification company. From a space engineer to a water system installer, Bill only sought to regain a simple rhythm in life. But what he didn't know was that this simplicity would open a door to something he had always dismissed as nonsense. Chapter 2. The 5 o'clock call. One Saturday, the company received a strange request. A customer insisted Bill must arrive at exactly 5 p.m., not a minute earlier or later. Being disciplined, Bill arrived early but waited in his car until the exact time before stepping onto the porch. The door was ajar. As he approached, he heard a woman shouting from inside, "Get out! Leave them!" A shrill, desperate voice that he knocked. No answer. He pushed the door open. In the dim light, he saw a middle-aged woman circling 3 kneeling men, holding an old book and murmuring in a strange tongue. She touched their heads and screamed out some kind of expulsion chant. Suddenly, she stopped, looked up, and pointed directly at Bill, her gaze piercing into his soul. Without waiting another second, he fled. Unbeknownst to him, he had just crossed an invisible threshold. Chapter 3. The First Signs. That evening, while watching TV and eating dinner, he saw a small shadow dart across the corner of the room. No pets, no mice. Just something that definitely moved. In the middle of the night, he was jolted awake by the sensation of something scurrying across his feet on the bed. He turned on the lights and searched the room, but found nothing. Moments later, the bed began to violently shake, like during an earthquake. But there were no tremors reported in the area. At dawn, while calling tech support due to a sudden internet outage, a bizarre voice interrupted the line, an unnatural, angry language, sounding like it came from a non-human throat. The technician also heard it, but insisted their system was fully secure. I tried shouting into the mic, but you couldn't hear me. I can't explain what happened, he said. Chapter 4. The Face in the Dark. Trying to sleep again, Bill sensed something crawling beneath the bed. Pulling the blanket over his head, he tried to stay calm. But the bedside lamp cast light through the fabric, just enough for him to see. A dark hand slowly creeping up. From the bed's edge, almost reaching his foot, it brushed past and vanished. Terrified, he turned on every light and checked the house. No one. No signs of forced entry. Yet the fear lingered. The next day, he called his brother, Bob, and asked him to step into the closet where strange noises had previously come from. In the dark, Bob was struck on the leg and face by something unseen. But he didn't tell Bill, worried it might make him even more frightened. That night, all three, Bill, Bob, and Bob's wife Cindy, sat watching TV. Each of them, one by one, saw a small, two-legged creature dart across the room. No one spoke. They turned on all the lights and searched the house thoroughly. Nothing. Chapter 5. The Voice That Couldn't Be Recorded. In a panic, Bill called his best friend Michael, an audio engineer. While Bill was explaining what happened, the same strange voice emerged through the phone. Michael quickly hooked up a professional mic and recorded for about 90 seconds. Later, when they played it back, only their voices were heard, not the eerie one. Though both had clearly heard it, the equipment had failed to capture it. Bill began to believe he no longer had control over his home. Something was pushing against him, and it was winning. Chapter 6. Battle with the Unseen. Bill contacted a paranormal investigation team led by Brian Hall. They installed cameras and a laser grid around the bedroom to detect movement. When one member entered the room and shouted, "If anyone's here, show yourself," one of the lasers dropped to the floor. The camera captured a misty swirl drifting across the room, invisible to the naked eye. Later that night, Bill was alone again. All lights on, classical music playing loud. Suddenly, a thunderous crash, like a truck ramming into the house, startled him. He ran outside to check. Nothing. Back inside, another crashing sound, this time from within the dining room. Then it moved upstairs to his bedroom. The noise continued even as he stood in the room. Chapter 7. The Form in the Dark. After the terrifying sounds, silence returned. Bill sat curled on the bed. Then, without warning, a tall, shadowy humanoid figure rose from beneath the bed, fangs bared, emerging at the foot of his bed. It growled, leaned in close to his face, then vanished. Since then, Bill woke up each morning with fresh scratch marks on his chest, his spirit crushed. He was hospitalized multiple times for arrhythmias and extreme stress that he remembered. The woman from the first house had shouted, "Leave them." Could it be that the entity had been exorcised from someone else and passed on to him? Bill performed 2 exorcisms, But the disturbances never ceased, and he still lives in that house because, in his own words, I could never let someone else go through what I've been through.
You've just heard a true story, or at least a piece of the truth, but what you just heard might still be happening somewhere out there. This is THN Mystery, where every shadow leaves a trace. Let us know your thoughts on the story, or tell us what you want to hear next. See you again, if you still dare to return.